Likkutei Sichos Chelik Beis, volume 22, the second Sicha for Parsha Shmini. This Sicha is a siyum on Masechet Uktzin and an siyum on the entire Shishe Sidre Mishnah, all 6 darim of the Mishnah. This Sicha will bring out the true purpose in why the neshama, our souls, come down here, lamata. Now, the connection to our Parsha is because Uktzin discusses the laws of Tumas Oichlin, Tumas Mashkin, more specifically, the impurity, the ritual impurity associated with liquids, and that is basically what the Masechta speaks about, what it discusses. There's very unique, specific applications of the law, and just to, as an introduction, just to familiarize ourselves with this, Tumas Mashkin means that if liquid come in contact with something, that makes the thing susceptible that if it comes in contact with something impure, it itself becomes impure. Now, we know that there are 7 types of liquids. One of them is honey coming from a bee. And that is very, very important and prudent in this Sicha. Another thing to familiarize ourselves with, the famous machlekes, the famous debate between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. That according to Beis Shammai, the house of Shammai means the thought process, the thinking of Shammai. One goes according to Azlinam Basar Koyach. You go according to potential. Meaning you go to the essential potential of something, and that says everything about the thing. According to Beis Hillel, Azlinam Basar Poil, you can go only in accordance to, meaning you can only rationalize with what is in actuality. Okay, Poil means action. Now, a common example of this is, on Hanukkah, Shammai says that you light 8 candles the first night, 7 candles the second night, 6 candles the third night, and so on. Why? Because in the first night, you have now potentially ahead of you, and you're celebrating that in potential, 8 nights of Hanukkah. Once you've already celebrated the first night, now the second night, you only have 7 ahead of you, and so on. Whereas Beis Hillel, and as we do it, the halacha now is like Beis Hillel, the first night, all you have is 1 day. You are now celebrating the first day of Hanukkah, light 1. The second day, now you have 2 days. That's what you have under your belt, so to speak. You light 2, and so on. Another thing to familiarize ourselves with is the idea of the concept of Yerusha, inheritance. Inheritance is something that one needs to do nothing for in order to receive. That means, according to the Torah, the virtue of the fact, or I should say the mere existence of the heir, makes them eligible, not only eligible, but automatically, without doing anything, without having to do any whatsoever contribution, they already receive, they already have inherited. It belongs to them without doing anything whatsoever. That means it's an inherent thing that as long as you're the heir, the rightful heir, you receive it. We'll see how that applies later in the Sicha. So getting into the Sicha, the very last tractate of the 6 Sdarim of the Mishnah is Maseches Uktzin, and it discusses, as we said, the laws pertaining to Tumas Oichlim Umashkin, the impurities related to food and liquids. The very last halacha, the very last law that appears, which is second to the last Mishnah, it says as follows: Chaluz Vash, which means honeycombs. From when exactly do they begin the process of becoming tummy? That means from what point are they considered liquid, the honey that's stored within? Well, Beis Shammai says, Misha Yaharher, from the moment that you contemplate or you decide that you're going to crush the honeycombs and allow the honey to ooze out, that means you've designated now to become purposeful honey, to become honey that meant for consumption. From that moment on, it's already considered as if it's a liquid, a viable liquid, and therefore it's susceptible for tumah. Whereas Beis Hillel says, no, thinking alone is not enough. Rather, misha yirasek, that you have to actually, when you begin the process of crushing the honeycombs, of popping it open, allowing for the honey to start to flow, that's when this becomes now considered to be a liquid. Then comes the next Mishnah, which is the final Mishnah, and it says as follows. The final Mishnah of all the Mishnayos, of all the 6 Darim of Mishnayos, says Rabbi Shua ben Levi, that in the future, when Mashiach comes, Hashem will lehanchil, He will make inherent to every single righteous person, meaning even every single Jew, Shai Oilamos, 310 worlds, means 310 exceptional levels of pleasure, of reward, as it says in the pasuk, a verse in Proverbs. It says, "Lahanchil oyhavayesh," that I may cause to inherit to my oyhavai, to my beloved ones, to those who love me, yesh, there is, or I will give them yesh, which yesh is yud and shin. Yud is 10, shin is 300. 310. I will make them inherit 310. The oitzrei sehem amale, and I will fill their treasures. Then comes the final statement in the Mishnah. Amar Rav Shimon Mechalafta. Rav Shimon Mechalafta says, "Leimotza Kadosh Baruch Hu kli machzik v'rachel Yisrael al Hashalem," that Hashem, so to speak, has not found a vessel which can hold blessing, anything else but peace. Shenemar, as it says in the verse, Hashem oiz la'am yitein, Hashem yivarech hasam v'shalom. That Hashem gives strength to His people. Hashem blessed His nation with peace. So you see, that blessing comes with peace. The Rebbe will not focus on this very last saying, rather the first saying of this very last Mishnah. Now here comes the obvious question, says the Rebbe. What is the connection between the last Mishnah and the second to the last Mishnah, which is the last law stated in the Shisha Siddur Mishnah? Indeed, the Rambam explains that there is no real connection. Rather, says the Rambam, because they wanted to conclude all the Mishnahs, all the entire 6 Dharma of the Mishnah, to tell us, quote, to let us know at the end of the Mishnah what is the reward that's given to all those righteous ones that study and fulfill the Mishnah and fulfill what's written in the Mishnah. End of quote of the Rambam. Says the Rebbe, that's true. It's true. We can't negate the Rambam. However, according to the rule that we find many times in the Gemara, where the Gemara asks, what's the connection in the sequence of the Mishnah? Not only in the sequence of the Mishnah in one tractate, or in the same chapter, moreover, but even when it comes from the end, the last Mishnah of one tractate to the first Mishnah, the next one, the Gemara asks many times, what's the connection? In other words, we assume, and it's almost like a matter of fact, that there is a connection. There has to be a connection. So says the Rebbe, without negating the Rambam, it's true what the Rambam says, but there's got to be something deeper here. What is the connection between honeycombs, honey that comes from bees, and this idea that Hashem will give us 310 worlds to those who are on an exceptional level of piety, that they are on the level of loving Hashem and doing it selflessly for the love of Hashem. So there's got to be a deeper connection. So the Rebbe says, to understand this connection, we'll first preface another question, an obvious question that we can ask, that could be asked over here. You see, the obvious question is, wait, somebody that just completed the 6 Siddharim of Mishnayos obviously also went through the Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers. And over there, in one of the very first Mishnahs, Antigna Shisoiche says, you should not be a servant of Hashem in order to receive a reward. Rather, the true and correct way to serve Hashem is for the purpose of not receiving any reward, anything in return. So how would you tell such a person, after having completed everything, here is your incentive, here is your encouragement, you're going to get a great reward, you're going to have a big promise of reward? It doesn't seem to make sense. After one reaching this high point, this pinnacle in the study of Mishnah, now they're going to be told about reward, after being told over and over again that it's not a virtuous thing? Moreover, the verse that Rabbi Shua ben Levi quotes from Mishlei, from Proverbs, is Lahanchil Oy Havai. What does it mean, Oy Havai? Oy Havai means, Hashem says, those who love me. What does it mean that someone who does the service of Hashem because they love Him? In other words, he's doing it not because he finds a purpose in it for himself, for self-elevation, albeit even a spiritual elevation, but it's still about themselves, but rather they do it selflessly and exclusively for the purpose of the love of Hashem, for what Hashem wants, or for what's, so to speak, good for Hashem. So how would you be offering such a person a reward? That's not what they want to hear. That's not what they want. That's not the reason why they do it. They're oyhavai. They're doing it exclusively and solely for the purpose of Hashem, not for the purpose of themselves, not even for a spiritual purpose. And therefore, says the Rebbe, this compels us to come to the conclusion that over here we're not talking about a reward. Rather, it's discussing a very elevated levels that we will reach at the end of our avodah, at the end of our service. And this is the point of connection between this saying about the 310 worlds that we will achieve and the honeycombs, the honey issue, and the machlekes, the debate between Shabbat and Silo. We know that the Medrash tells us that the unique quality of honey, of bees, actually is really an expression of what we Jews are all about. Because in the words of the Medrash, in Dvarim Rabbah, the Medrash says that the Voira, the bee, Kol Mashay Misageles, everything it stores, everything it accumulates, it doesn't accumulate for itself, because we know, if anybody knows science, it doesn't ever get to enjoy it. It doesn't ever get to benefit from it. And who does get to benefit from it? Whoever is the owner of the honeycomb, whoever is the owner of the beehive. They themselves never ever get even an iota of pleasure from that thing. In other words, everything it does quote for its master, it does quote for its owner. And this is synonymous and symbolic of the Jew that is totally selfless, the Oy Havai. It does everything only for Hashem, not for himself, not for his own elevation, not for his own spiritual advancement. And now we can appreciate the connection to the machlekes of Shammai Hillel and the logic, the rationale behind the machlekes. You see, Beis Shammai, like we said in the introduction, his way of thinking, his philosophy is Azlina Vasa Koyach. You always go according to potential. Whereas Beis Hillel says, no, you go according to Poyel. You go according to actuality. You go according to what has been achieved. That's what you can count. This expresses the purpose of the avodah. If you apply it to the purpose of the avodah, of our avodah down here, our neshama coming down here, and the fulfillment we reach through our avodah. And only after machlekes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel do we have a better understanding, a better appreciation of what we said about this concept, this idea that Hashem will be manchil, Hashem will make us inherit the 310 worlds. You see, because first of all, we can ask the following question. What does this mean? That Hashem will be manchil, lahanchil, oy havayesh, that I will make them inherit. We know that the idea, the premise of an inheritance, of a Yerusha is that it happens on its own, by default, without any whatsoever possibility to be earned. You cannot earn an inheritance. You receive an inheritance. Just a virtue of the fact that someone is the son of someone, they receive an inheritance. And if that's the case, and therefore it should have been written in the verse, it should have said, Laseis la'oy havayesh. I will give to those who love me, I will give to them, not I will make inherit to them. And interestingly, that this very same saying also appears elsewhere in the Talmud, and there in Mesechus Sanhedrin, and there indeed it does appear with the word laseis, not lahanchil. So what's the answer? The answer is that, says the Rabbi, indeed over there it's discussing reward. Over here, as we said before, it's not discussing reward. It's rather telling us what in the future, those who are selflessly devoted to the service of Hashem will reach such a high level of connection to Hashem, such a high level of pleasure in service of Hashem that is beyond, and it's represented in the idea of 310, as we'll see soon. But it's in a way of inheritance. How can we understand that? So the Rebbe introduces a thought, an idea, from the Rogat Shover, from the great Goyen, Rabbi Yosef Rosen, the Rogat Shover Goyen. He explains that the right approach, when one analyzes the concept of Yerusha, of inheritance, it's not that you have two entities and it transfers ownership from the father, from one entity, to the son, the second entity, but rather the Moirish is Bimkoim HaYoirish. And the Yoirish Bimkoim HaMoirish. That means the heir and the person who is now allowing him to inherit, meaning by virtue of passing away, whatever it is, they're one entity. It's seamless. It doesn't transfer even. They're actually like one entity. And whatever happens to him, and therefore whatever applies to the original owner, now applies to the heir. The same rights and the same obligations, and so on and so forth. And that is what is being hinted over here. And that's why he's using this expression. Rabbi Yeshua Malevi is telling us that the ultimate level is, the ultimate highest level that a Jew would reach is they would become, through Torah mitzvahs, totally bond with Hashem as if they become one with Hashem. Such a type of connection that Hashem and the Yid is one thing, like a Moirish, like a Yoidish. And this is the reason why actually it says, Lahanchil Oihavai Yesh. Remember, we're trying to hint 310. Well, it could have said Lahanchil Oihavai Shai. Shai means a gift. Why does it say Yesh? Which Yesh, the literal meaning of Yesh, means an existence, an entity. And indeed, the Rambam explains that the reason why it says over here Yesh, because what they're going to inherit, what they're going to receive, is the ultimate existence. What is the ultimate existence? The existence of Hashem. In other words, that's what they're going to get. When Mashiach comes, we're going to reach the highest level, the highest pinnacle of Avodah. Then we're going to connect to Hashem, the ultimate Yesh, the ultimate existence of all. Question is, how can that happen? How can a Yid become one with Hashem, with the ultimate existence? How's that possible? How can a human being? Well, at the end of the day, the holiest Jew is still a human being. The answer is, like we said, this is through the concept of Yerusha, and that's why it says Lahanchil, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol makes you and him one thing. And if it's one thing, then it's possible. And now we could understand the great pleasure that will be. And what is the whole idea of this 310 worlds? It doesn't mean only 310, because 310 is a limit, and therefore it's not infinite. So how can that be the ultimate connection to Hashem? It's as the Rambam explains, says the Rebbe, that this is an indication of an infinite level of levels of pleasure. It's just that it says a Shai in a manner of like saying like so many, like 310, like whoa, a great number. But really it's far beyond that. What is this infinite pleasure? This is not the pleasure that we get from the Avodah. But when we become one with Hashem, then His pleasure, which obviously His pleasure is infinite, the ultimate infinity, is what we get to enjoy because we become one to Him. And that's Bli Sof, that's no end, that's infinite. Now we can better appreciate why it says, Oy Havai, those who love me. Because this only is for those who truly, quote, love me. That their whole reason, their whole motive all along for Havodah wasn't for themselves, for their achievement, which is not a bad thing, by the way. But still, it's for themselves. It's for them to become elevated. It's for them to become greater spiritually. But rather was all for the purpose of generating pleasure for Hashem. Now they will get to enjoy that by being connected to Hashem, not so much as a reward, like we said before, that reaches a much higher level in Avodah to actually get to, so to speak, partake in the pleasure that Hashem has in the Avodah that we do. And now we can better tackle the connection between the machlekes of Beis Shammai V'Sila, the debate of Beis Shammai V'Sila, to this idea. Indeed, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Likkutei Torah, ultimately the neshama comes down to this world, it gets elevated by its avodah down here. In other words, no matter how great the neshama is, the soul, before it comes down to the sense to this world, but by being in this world and doing the avodah, it becomes elevated. However, according to the Beis Shammai, the neshama itself already has this all in potential. In other words, even before descending to this world, it doesn't have to prove itself. It doesn't have to actually do the avodah in order to bring out the fact that it has the potential of transforming the world and it has the potential of elevating itself. Because according to Beis Shammai, the main thing is the koyach. And therefore, the effect of the neshama coming down to the world is not so old, it's not such an ultimate thing, it's not so great. And therefore, really, it's not even necessary in a sense, according to Beis Shammai. The fact that the neshama comes back to the world, comes down to the world, is Hashem's desire. Hashem wants a dira b'tachtonim. And that is the idea, like we said before, of the bees. That is the idea of the bee. Its whole purpose, its whole existence, it doesn't do anything for itself. It works its entire life. Whatever its lifespan is, whatever it may be, it works and it works and it works and it hustles. For what? Not for itself. It gets nothing out of it. And that's what Beis Shammai is saying. The neshama, it's all about the potential. The neshama itself doesn't get anything out of it. It doesn't need to get anything out of it. It has nothing to prove to anyone. Not to itself, not to anyone else. The neshama is fantastic. Why does it come down to this world? Because Hashem wants it to. Because Hashem wants it to accomplish something in this world. But it itself doesn't really need it. However, Beis Hillel, on the other hand, he says, no, you go according to Payel. to actuality. See what you have accomplished, to actual achievement. And therefore it comes out, according to Beis Hillel, that when a neshama comes down to this world, it actually does affect the neshama. And the neshama, so to speak, needs this elevation, this transformation that comes specifically and only because it came down to this world. Because that's what reveals its true inner strength, its true inner potential. And therefore, notwithstanding the fact that indeed he doesn't argue with the fact that the neshama comes down to this world for diru v'tachtonim in order to achieve Hashem's desire, Hashem's will in transforming the world, but still the neshama itself gets something out of it. And now we'll understand the connection between these two last Mishnahs. In this very last Mishnah, it's advising us, Rabbi Shua ben Levi is advising us that even according to Beis Hillel, that, as we said, the neshama does accomplish something, the neshama does achieve virtue and value in coming down to this world. Even according to him, we say that the bottom line is, that the truth is, that everything is for Hashem. Lahanchil oy havai, that it's yesh, that it's all, as we explained above, it's all about Hashem's pleasure, and it's all about being oy havai, doing it selflessly, even spiritually selflessly, for Hashem, and therefore become eligible for that quote, lahanchid, that inheritance to become one with Hashem, to appreciate, to get to appreciate, to get to enjoy, to get to feel that highest level of the pleasure of Hashem. However, Rabbi Shua ben Levi brings the end of the verse, which says, "Va'oitzrei sehem amalek," because there's a little bit here of Beis Hillel, because the fact is the halacha now, as we're going to explain in a moment, is like Beis Hillel. And therefore he brings the words, "Va'oitzrei sehem," and their treasures I will fill. In other words, there's also something about them meaning the Jew, the neshama, as the neshama comes down here. The Rebbe concludes with saying, we know that la'ased lavim Mashiach comes, the halacha will be like Beis Shammai. Now the world is a world of darkness, and therefore everybody kind of feels their own existence. We don't feel so much Hashem, and therefore the halacha is like Beis Hillel. That also in a person down here, as the world is now, as the neshama comes down to the world now, the avodah of the person does definitely have a positive effect, does have a visible and obvious transformational effect. However, when Mashiach comes, the halacha will be like Beis Shammai, and then we'll feel that everything is only for Hashem, and there will be the ultimate fulfillment of this last statement of the Mishnayos, of Yeshua ben Levi's statement, that everything will be just to feel Hashem's pleasure. It will be ultimately about Hashem.